What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on what if Deku had aura manipulation part 2. Where we last left off, we had Deku and Bakugo walking into the entrance exam. Mirio wished Deku and Bakugo good luck. Bakugo kind of just brushed this off while Deku says thank you and thanks Mirio back. They didn't catch up with All Might. So they both enter the room and... Sorry, my throat's still kind of bad. So they both enter the practical exam, and President Mike starts talking about the practical exam, and thanks to working with Mirio and being able to study and stuff as well, they're both basically understand instantaneously almost every single question and gets the highest scores, them two, even more than Yadorozu. Or Momo, if you know her by that instead. And then after that, we go on to the physical exam. And basically, President Mike's explaining the whole entire thing with Ida doesn't happen because Deku doesn't mumble as much. So, even if he was mumbling, it would be much less to where the point where basically even Ida couldn't hear it if he was mumbling or mentally mumbling to himself rather than saying it aloud. Ida goes into his theme with the whole entire zero-pointer, how it wasn't explained and everything. And then Bakugo basically tells Ida just to shut up and let President Mike finish this, which makes Ida upset. And then Deku obviously apologizes for Bakugo's behavior. And Bakugo just shrugs this off again. Because Bakugo really, like I stated, Bakugo isn't as much of a douche. He's more of a there, and he's not as much as a douche, but he still has that kind of edgy personality where he just wants to blow everyone off. But thanks to Deku, he's not super just I want to kill everyone. He's more chill. So then they all start heading out for it, and then Deku asks Bakugo if he could copy his quirk or manipulate his aura to match Bakugo's aura so he can use the quirk. And Bakugo says, yeah, sure. Because he already knows, and he already knows that basically everything else is going to happen the same, so he might as well just let him copy it now. So that happens, and then Deku actually extended his timer. Before he can only use to hold it for 10, now he can hold it up to 30 minutes. So by the time he gets there, it's not even like the quirks run out. So it's about, well, I'm guessing it's like a 5-minute walk. So he has like 25 minutes worth of Bakugo's quirk that he can still use. And by the time he gets there, he senses quirks all around him and everything. And he picks up a hardening quirk to extent. It's not as good as Kirishima's, but it's not like the Metal Dude's quirk either. It's definitely a lesser variation of hardening. Like, I would say, like, he could only harden one part of his body. And he also picks up the one from Uraraka, because the whole entire event with Uraraka doesn't happen. He just senses that Uraraka's quirk is kind of powerful and decides to copy it. And then as soon as he copies it, he knows the quirk and knows how it works. And he can multiply the quirk's power by 5. And thanks to what Mirio had told Bakugo and Deku before they had entered, stating that as soon as those doors are up, you can instantly blitz. You don't have to wait for him to say go. So Deku's automatically on her way out there and starting to run. As soon as the doors go up, and President Mike's like, well, what are y'all waiting for? That kid got the message. Go, go, go! And then they're all running out there now. And Ida's kind of impressed by this, and Uraraka really doesn't care because she doesn't know Deku yet and doesn't know his personality or anything. And even though, yes, I know the teachers are off in the observation room, seeing how I do not know how far the observation room is, I'm not going to allow Deku to copy the Ambers of One For All. Which, to explain this, because I think some people were going to be confused, when Deku copies One For All is like an amplifier on your quirks. So when Deku copies One For All, he can boost it up to 5 times. So he can have the 5th user's power. And then that reflects by boosting his quirks, all the other quirks he has. So like when he copies One For All and boosts it up 5 times, all of his other quirks, except for his copy quirk, because I don't want to give Deku just infinite power when he boosts One For All, because I can easily go back and forth in between the 2 different quirks, get a minimum boost. So basically, One For All just doubles his quirk, which allows him to buff all the other quirks he has up to 10 times rather than just leaving them at 5 times power. So not only can he just do basic strength enhancement by buffing his own aura up, but he can also buff up the hardening quirk he got, so he can harden more of his body at one time, as well as Uraraka's quirk and Bakugo's quirk. So basically those are the 4 quirks, even though one of them doesn't even count as a quirk. That's just him buffing his own body. And he does that. But he does not have a copied version of One For All at this moment. So Deku's running around and taking out 1-pointers, and then the 2-pointers start to show up, and Deku's just decking all of them, taking all of them out. And then the 3-pointers start to show up, and Deku's starting to have a slight trouble. It's not too much, legitimately, because he's only using 3 times the power of the quirks, because he doesn't want to use 5 times. Because I'm going to say when he uses them at a higher variation level, so like when he buffs them up to 10 times, that minute from 30 minutes per quirk goes down to 10. And I don't know how long the practical exam is, so I'm saying he's only using them at 3 times power, which doesn't actually affect the duration on time. It starts to affect at 4 and then at 5, because those are like when he's pushing the limit of his quirk without One For All being copied. But he's pushing his limit of his quirk right then and there. So then he feels the ground starting to shake, and he instantaneously senses something's up, but he can't sense an aura or anything. So he presumes that it's just a robot. And then he turns around to see the giant 0-pointer, and he's instantaneously like, okay, we need to get away. I can't fight this with the current quirks. Or at least I don't think I have enough power to. And then he sees, or he hears a scream. And Deku instantaneously, since he has a more of a cocky attitude, he's not too much more cocky. He's still our lovable Deku, but he definitely believes in himself a lot more and has the confidence to stand up for himself, especially seeing how he wasn't bullied for not having a quirk. He basically sits there and he hears the scream, and it takes him like 3 seconds before he instantaneously starts running. And it's like before he even notices that he starts running to where the scream came from. And he shows up. And he's not as fast as Ida. He's a little bit slower. But he shows up in front and sees that there's a girl with, I think her haircut's a bowl haircut. A bowl-style haircut. I'm pretty sure she's reddish-haired. Reddish or orange. I don't know. I don't think I'm colorblind, but I might be, based on me not being able to tell what hair color is or certain colors are. But basically, he runs up on Uraraka and sees Uraraka trapped. And seeing how he had already copied Uraraka's quirk earlier on and he was using it to help, he instantaneously uses her quirk, not knowing that it was hers completely, not yet anyway, because her aura had been diminished so much thanks to the injury she took, and lifts up the rock and then punches it away with the 5 times human strength he has and the hardening quirk, basically mixing those 2 together. And then he helps Uraraka out, and Uraraka is like, wow, you have a quirk that's like mine? And then Deku instantaneously thinks, oh shoot, she's the girl I copied the quirk off. I guess I shouldn't explain it right now and just go, yeah, I do. So that's all he says. He's like, yeah, I do. And out of nowhere, he sees the big giant 0-pointer about to start smashing him with a fist. And he's like, oh, I can't move her out of the way and stop the 0-pointer. So basically, he runs back a little bit, trying to get some space. And then he chucks Uraraka, but he touches Uraraka as well. So like when she gets chucked, she's floating basically. And he floats Uraraka away to a safe distance, and then he also touches the giant robot, starting to make the giant robot float. And Uraraka's just impressed by this, because she thinks I couldn't even do that, even with like 20 years of training my quirk, yet he's able to do it with just fine. And Deku's starting to get motion sickness, because he did still takes on the negatives, it's just dumbed down, or yeah, dumbed down seeing how he multiplied the quirk. And he's already multiplying it by 5 at this point. And the robot's like not even an inch off the ground. And he's about to start barfing up his guts because of how much weight he's having to manipulate. So he quickly jumps up and using the hardening ability as well as Bakugo's explosive ability and just his base strength boost, he punches the robot. I'm not going to say it does a little bit less than Deku in the original anime, but still enough to knock the robot off its feet, especially with him already being levitated by Uraraka's quirk. But basically after that, Deku's all out of energy, and he starts falling quickly, and Uraraka instantaneously gets released because as soon as he loses consciousness, as I stated, all the quirks he's copied are gone. So it's not like Uraraka's just going to be constantly flying in the air. No, she starts to fall, and she's right next to him. So she taps him as well as taps herself to make sure they both land safely, and then Deku lands on the floor, and then the practical exam ends with Deku being unconscious. When he wakes up again, he's in the nurse's office with Recovery Girl, and Recovery Girl's like, "You use too much of your power. You should really be more careful when you use your quirk." And Deku's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry." Because, he does know he used a lot of power to even do that. And Recovery Girl's like, "But your quirk is quite impressive, being able to not only levitate, but also be able to use enhanced strength and hardening and explosives. Just what kind of quirk do you have?" And Deku explains his quirk being called aura manipulation, where he sees auras of other people and can manipulate his aura to fit the situation by copying other people's auras around him. And then he proves this by cutting his hand with a scalpel, copying Recovery Girl's quirk, and then kissing his own hand to heal it. And Recovery Girl notices that it actually heals a lot quicker than what her quirk can do. And she goes, that's amazing. It doesn't look like it's only just copies. He's like, "Oh yes, I can copy it up to 5 times. But if I copy it all the way up to 5 times, it diminishes the amount of time I can hold on to the quirk for." And she says, "Okay, but that's still amazing. That's a real powerful quirk." He's like, "Yeah, I know." And Deku starts to walk home. You gotta remember, Deku is a little bit more cocky. So he walks home, and about 2 weeks pass, when out of nowhere his mom just bursts into his room with a letter from UA. And Deku and Bakugo are just chilling and talking at this point when his mom walked in. So she says, "Hi, Kachan. Izuku, look! It's your letter from UA." And Bakugo gets a giant grin. And then Deku gets a grin too, because they both automatically think that they got pretty good scores. They're probably going to win. So Deku opens the letter, and out comes a little holodisc, and All Might shows up. And Deku's like, "Oh, it's All Might." And then Bakugo's just flabbergasted too, because he loves All Might as well. And then All Might says, "Yun Izuku Midoriya, you ranked top first out of all the students, with the second place only being 2 points behind you." And he does the rest of the speech. I can't remember it currently. And it's like, "Welcome to your Hero Academia." And Deku's delighted. Bakugo kind of gets like "Oh, okay, you rank first?" And Deku's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you only ranked first because you copied my quirk as well." And he's like, "Oh, no, I copied other quirks too." "Yeah, you only ranked first because you used the power of your friends." And, Bakugo's a little bit upset. But that's just their common conversation, Bakugo, he doesn't totally dislike Deku's quirk, but he does think that the basic ability of being able to just copy other people's power and use it for his own is kind of cheap. But he really doesn't think that too much, because he does know that Deku did have to train a lot to get to the point, because he couldn't even originally copy, if you remember. He had aura sensing originally, but then he learned how to manipulate his aura, giving him aura manipulation, and that's when we changed the quirk name and everything. And then Bakugo goes home, and then the next day, Bakugo shows up at his house, stating that he was the second placed one, with only 2 points behind you. "Only if I destroyed another 2-pointer, Bakugo says. And Izuku's like, "Yeah, but you did it, and I win first. Sorry, bro." And Bakugo just scoffs it off. And then Bakugo and Izuku hang out for the other week. Bakugo and Izuku are now walking to UA. And they get into the classroom at the same time, seeing how they're both there. And the whole entire fight with Ida really doesn't happen. Or at least not yet. It doesn't happen when Izuku walks in because Bakugo's chilling with him. And then Bakugo starts to talk with Izuku when out of nowhere, Ida just runs up and starts going on a spiel. Oh, you're ranked number 1 and you're ranked number 2. Y'all seem to be good friends too. And then Bakugo and Deku, I'm done calling him Izuku. I really can't do it that long. Deku just kind of scoffs it off. Bakugo scoffs off and laughs while Deku just sits there and grinning and, like accepting the praise. He's not too much of an ego head, but he does have a little bit more of an ego. Out of nowhere, he gets tapped on the back and he turns around to see the girl that he saved. And when this happens, Bakugo starts laughing and walking back to his seat and puts his seat up on the desk, which he really doesn't care right now. Which Ida, not paying attention to Bakugo, currently doesn't mind it. And Uraraka's like, oh, I know that green hair. You're the boy with the quirk that's similar to mine. And Deku says, no, I don't have a gravity manipulation quirk. And Uraraka is confused at this point, and she's like, but how? You were able to make that boulder float off of me. Do you have like a wind manipulation or density manipulation quirk? And Izuku's like, no, see, my quirk's called aura manipulation. And Uraraka gets a confused look on her face, and so does Ida, who's also listening in on the conversation. And then Bakugo's like, yeah, Izuku's quirk's called aura manipulation. It lets him manipulate his aura and make it change to others. And Izuku's like, thanks, Bakugo. And she's like, oh, so you manipulated your aura and make it similar to mine, basically? And he's like, yeah, that's what let me float the rock because I copied your quirk. And she's like, but I couldn't even do that. Like, I would throw up if I did that, but you somehow handled it just fine. And he's like, oh yeah, I can also boost the ability of the quirks that I copy. And Ida thinks, like, this is fascinating. So he's like, so could you copy, like, my quirk? And Deku's like, no, I couldn't copy your quirk. Your quirk is a mutation quirk. You literally have engines coming out of your calves. I couldn't copy that. But with an emitter-based quirk like Uraraka's, I could copy it. And then they're talking, and then Ida remembered that Bakugo had his feet up on the desk and starts yelling at Bakugo. And Deku sees this weird yellow lump fall into the room. And he turns around and he's like, what's that? Now, out of nowhere, a human emerges from this yellow thing that's on the floor, which is a sleeping bag. And Aizawa just stands there, and everyone just starts to quiet down as they see this weird man just standing there. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down. That will not do. Get on your gym uniforms. We're going out to take a test. And some of the kids are like kind of confused, going like, but we just had a test to get into school. Why are we taking another test? And he just like, should we be going to the entrance ceremony, sir? And he's like, no. I know that you took a test to get in here, but I don't know what your quirks are. I can't see the abilities of your quirks. And he's like, okay. So they all get on their gym uniforms and they go out there, and it's the starting ball throw. And Aizawa was like, Izuku Midoriya. And Deku stands up and he's like, yes, sir. As like kind of a joking tone. And he's like, you scored first on the test, right? And he's like, yeah, I did. And he's like, what's your longest ball throw in middle school? And Deku states it was 61. And Aizawa was like, 61, impressive. Because 61's a pretty decent range. And then he's like, okay, now using your quirk, chuck this ball as far as you can. And Deku goes, "Sir, can I go later on and do this?" And Aizawa asks, "Why do you need to go later on? Why can't you just do it now?" And Deku explains his quirk. Again, I'm not going to explain it for a third time today. But he goes on about it being aura manipulation, that he basically copies quirks by manipulating his own aura. And Aizawa's like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's the reason why you need to go later on." So then he calls up Bakugo, since Bakugo was second place, and Bakugo chucks the ball. And Bakugo got 63 on regular, but on this toss, I think his toss was like... Well, I'm going to say it's 800 meters before the ball got burned up, mainly because thanks to Bakugo training with Deku, he got to see how to make his quirk stronger, and because of that, he could start using it better. Afterwards, Bakugo and Deku, after that, all the students are kind of impressed, and then they start going through their other stuff, and Deku doesn't rank first in, like, some of them. He ranks first in one, but the other ones he does not rank first in. So in other words, he ranks first in the grip strength, mainly because someone, oh god, I can't remember his name. Oh no. The red-haired dude, Bakugo's friend, the red-haired dude. It's not Calamari. God, I'm gonna have to search that up. He goes first and he uses his hardening quirk, and Deku copies the hardening quirk. So when Deku goes, he doesn't only have the hardening quirk, he also has a strength enhancement quirk, and basically scores on the grip strength test. And Aizawa doesn't do his whole "I'm gonna expel whoever gets the lowest" speech, because they weren't all chatting and telling how it'd be fun, because they have a more serious tone, because Deku just went on a long-winded explanation. So basically everyone was trying to ingest his quirk while that happened, so Aizawa didn't have a reason of saying that he was going to expel whoever is at the lowest throwing strength. So afterwards, it goes back to Deku doing the ball throw, and Deku had already seen Uraraka do it and copied Uraraka's quirk, as well as copied Bakugo's and Kirishima's. Kirishima, that was his name! Oh my god, I remembered it. And copied Kirishima's from earlier, and used his boosted strength just to basically get infinity because of Uraraka's. And if you want to be technical, it's infinity times 5, but it's just infinity. And so basically, he scores first, tied with Uraraka for ball throw. And then they all go back inside, and All Might's watching from afar. And Deku knew this because he could sense All Might's aura, because he already knows All Might. So when he senses the aura, he knows where the person's at. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I still have a cough. And basically, they go back inside there. And we skip a few days after that. And people have basically formed friend groups. You know, you have the trio, the main trio. Todoroki's not with them yet, but Bakugo's there too. And Kirishima hangs out with them more now as well. But Soro doesn't hang out with them as much, because Sora and Mineta still hang out with Ashido and... God. Karamari? The electric dude. It's Karamari. I can't remember his name. And Momo still kind of talks to Shoto. Or Todoroki. Whatever you want to call him. And then school starts, and then All Might busts through the door. And he's like, "Coming through the door like a normal person." And then Deku instantaneously says out loud that that's not like a normal person. Because he has a knows All Might relationship, so he can just like say this, and then he remembers, oh shoot, I'm in a classroom with people who think All Might very highly. That probably wasn't the smartest move to say. And All Might's like, "You're right, young Midoriya. My bad." You know, because All Might knows Midoriya pretty well too, and then it's like as they try to laugh it off, like they don't know each other that well. And then basically All Might explains the current situation and what's going on. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna go down to, I think it's Beta City, or no, is it Beta City? Yeah, I'm gonna call it Beta City. They're just doing the heroes versus villain tests. So they go down there, and the teams are still the same, and the matchups are gonna be the same. Of course, the first fight's not gonna be the same, but the rest of them are. So it's Deku and Uraraka versus Bakugo and Ida. And you know, all of them are pretty close friends, so he doesn't call Ida Four Eyes. He calls him by his name. He's like, okay, Ida, so we need to make a plan, because I'm not going to lie, Izuku's probably going to beat us if we don't. And Ida agrees. He's like, yeah, Izuku's kind of broken currently, or very much outmatched our capabilities. So they come up with the plan that Bakugo's going to wait at the starting entrance while Ida's going to just act like the main problem. And then Bakugo's going to quickly try to explode Deku behind the head, trying to knock him out. Even though Bakugo's like, that plan's not going to work though. Why? Because he can sense where we're at thanks to his aura sensing, one of his abilities, remember? And Ida's like, yeah, sneak attacks are going to be very difficult. And yes, like, if Deku was going against a trained hunter that knows how to hide their aura, or basically hide their presence, which I'm going to count as hiding their aura, then yeah, he wouldn't be able to sense it as well. He would still sense something's up, but he wouldn't be able to sense it. It's like putting a suppressor on the gun. You can still hear it go pop. So, basically, what happens next is that Uraraka and Deku are sitting outside, and they're like, and Deku's like, they're probably going to go after me. So Uraraka, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy your quirk, and I'm going to chuck you up at the window, and you just bust through the window at the top. Or I'm going to chuck you all the way up to the top of the building, so then you can go down and try to find the bomb while they probably target me. And then Deku activates his aura sensing as soon as the thing says go, and he can see that they're at the top floor currently. And so Deku busts through the door using his enhanced strength and speed and starts running after throwing Uraraka up there. So Uraraka instantaneously goes through, and Ida basically starts sprinting out, and so does Bakugo, basically knowing that they have to take out Deku if they even have a chance at winning this. Afterwards, basically 5 seconds later, the hero team wins. And Bakugo and Ida are like, what? We just started 5 seconds ago. How did they win? And then they just start watching the recording after class to see Deku just yeet Uraraka up there and basically just touches the bomb instantly. And you know, Bakugo's like, oh, well, that's kind of BS, you know. Come on, Deku, what, you were too afraid to fight us? And Deku's like, no, I just chose the plan that was the smartest. And, well, of course, he doesn't say Deku, he says Izuku. And then, you know, Ida's pretty down about this too, but he does realize that Deku just used his quirk and used his smarts to win the fight easier. And the rest of the events play out, you know. Todoroki's a little bit more fired up knowing that Deku's basically a large threat that he's going to have to topple over if he wants to become number one hero. So that event happens. So I'm pretty sure it's USJ before tournament arc. And we'll probably do USJ and save tournament for next episode. So basically, what happens next is that a few days later, Aizawa starts to explain that they're gonna have a field trip, and they're gonna take the field trip out to the USJ, and that they keep on thinking it's the United Studios of Japan, but that's not what it is. It's just the unforeseen situation. I can't remember what the J stands for. It stands for something. So while they're going there, they have their quirk conversation, and everyone already knows Deku's quirk, basically, because Deku explained it on day one, so everyone understands it. But then people start to ask, so what's your limits? What allows you to do it to max? And Deku says, well, currently I can only copy 4 quirks. And I can basically times the quirk's capabilities up to 5 times. But I have a time limit after I copy the quirk. And if I boost it, that time limit goes down. If I boost it 5 or 4 times, it goes down. But I can boost that 3 times and it'll stay at its normal time. And then they go, well, what's your normal time? He says, after I copy it, I have 30 minutes of free use. But if I boost it up to 4, that 30 minutes becomes 20. And if I boost it up to 5, that 30 minutes becomes 10. And that's when I just can't use the quirk anymore. And then they see and understand that, oh, basically that's his limit then. He could copy up to 4 quirks. And he's like, oh, but when I copy quirks, I can combine them. Like how I copied a hardening quirk, or I copied Kirishima's quirk in some cases, and I multiply it by 5. So he can use the mode Kirishima found, which is, I think it's like Unbreakable. In like the 4th season, he uses it to make sure he doesn't get hit with the anti-quirk drug. And he can automatically already use that. He's like, when I also copy, I automatically know the quirk that I copied. I know its limits. I know its limitations it currently had when the user used it. And then they're all impressed by this. They're like, wow, so not only can your ability be used to an offensive capability, it can also be used as a defensive and a scouting capability, as well as information gathering capability. And Deku basically says, yeah, that's all the things I can do. And they're all impressed, because not only can he use his ability to tell where people are at, he can also use it to know their quirks and know the limits to where they can even use those quirks at the time. Not only that, he can use their quirks, and buff the quirks that he uses, as well as tons of other things. And they're just impressed by this at this point. So they arrive at the USJ, and they walk through, and out of nowhere, they're doing the explanation and everything, and then Deku instantaneously senses an aura, a dark aura. And he sees a portal, and he says, Aizawa, there's an emergency going on at the center. There's a portal forming. And Aizawa's instantaneously confused, going like, what are you on about, Deku? And Deku points towards the portal, and Aizawa sees this, and he tells 13 to get the kids out, which 13 does instantly. But Deku decides to stay behind. And because Deku decided to, Bakugo, being his best friend's like, yeah, I'm staying behind too. And then so does Shoto, because Shoto doesn't want to get passed up by these other 2. Everyone else is like, okay, yeah, you guys can stay behind. We're getting out of Dodge, and we're running. So everyone else has already escaped, and by the time Shigaraki and all the villains enter, they just see this 4-man team just standing there looking at them. And Shigaraki's like, where's All Might? Where's All Might? And Kirigiri's like, Master Shigaraki, All Might should be here. And then Shigaraki's like, I know that, but I don't see it. All I see is these 3 kids and that one hero. And Shigaraki's like, Kirigiri's like, yes, this is strange that we only see 4 personnel. There was meant to be a whole class here with at least 3 pro heroes. And Eraserhead instantaneously starts to go down there and starts to beat up the heroes, while Deku copies Bakugo's quirk, as well as Shoto's, so he has the fire and ice abilities, which aren't 2 separate quirks, it's 1 quirk. So that happens, and then he starts fighting too, thinking that he needs to copy Kirishima's. But he does choose to copy one of the villain's quirks, which he copies Shigaraki's decay quirk, as well as Kirigiri's portal quirk. Because I'm pretty sure, yes, it's a mutation style quirk, like Ojiro's tail, but I think his base quirk, like the portal opening one, is not mutation. It's just he can open portals. So I'm going to state Deku can copy that, but it's not like it changes his physical appearance. Kirigiri notices this, and also when Deku touches someone, they basically instantaneously evaporate because he multiplies Shigaraki's by 5. And Deku just is blowing through all the villains instantaneously. Not only does he have enhanced movement, he also has enhanced strength, explosions, fire and ice, as well as instant decay and portals for even quicker movement. And then Kirigiri is like, Master Shigaraki, I do think we need to bring in the Nomu. This boy seems to have a very strong quirk. It seems to be on par with what do they refer to All For One as? As your master's ability. I'm just gonna say that. And Shigaraki's like, yes, I do agree. We need to bring in the Nomu. So the Nomu shows up, and you gotta remember, like, 85% of the villains are dead at this point, or not dead. 85% of the villains are unconscious at this point. And then while the Nomu shows up. And Ida had run back after escaping to tell 13 about the not 13, but to tell the heroes back at the academy about the attack. So that happens as well. And Izuku tells Eraserhead that we need to take out that Nomu. That fiend there has multiple abilities or multiple quirks. I can sense it. And then Eraserhead's like, are you sure? Or Aizawa's like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, I can tell instantaneously that this is a bad situation and we need to take him out. So basically, Eraserhead instantaneously uses his ability to erase quirks to erase all of the Nomu's quirks, which does get rid of the aura as well around the Nomu. It doesn't just erase the quirks, it erases his aura. So that's a cool little fun fact. So Deku runs in there and shoots a giant fire blast. Like, we're talking like Todoroki, basically endgame fire blasts. And he shoots eye shards out of his hand that are hyper sharp. As well as he runs behind the Nomu, so Aizawa's quirk doesn't affect his, and touches Nomu on the back, basically disintegrating Nomu instantaneously. But during that, Shigaraki tries to touch him. Now, Deku notices this and quickly spins around and leaps through a portal. And Shigaraki sees this portal and he's like, Kirigiri, why did you activate a portal to save the boy? And Kirigiri's like, I didn't, Master Shigaraki. Apparently he has some sort of copy-based quirk, because he seemed to have copy yours and mine. But he seems to also be able to increase the power. So Deku quickly ducks out of the way and ducks back in to shoot a blast of ice at Shigaraki, basically leaving him unconscious. And by then, Kirigiri knows that this is time to leave, and activates a portal under Shigaraki's body to bring him back there, as well as to just leave. So when that happens, basically all the other villains get rounded up by Bakugo and Shoto, who are both there also. Just they decide to take out smaller villains, knowing that the Nomu was something that they probably could not face. Afterwards, All Might comes in, and he's like, don't worry, because I am here. And he sees all the villains being like knocked out unconscious on the floor, and just sees all 4 of them, and sees a pile of dust nearby Deku. And All Might's like, Eraserhead, what happened? Even though he would usually ask Deku and Bakugo what happened, because, you know, he does trust Deku and Bakugo a lot, about the same amount as Eraserhead, if not a little more, because they are close, like, know All Might's secret and had been training with All Might constantly for, like, the past 10 years, and even though they are not his successor, he does still appreciate them as being his successor. So, like, he knows that they aren't, but he thinks of them as being like possibilities for being the next symbol of peace, in essence, especially Deku. So Eraserhead explains that a group of villains had entered the USJ and attacked, and that basically they brought in a weird purple creature, which Deku instantaneously stated that needed to be taken out because A, it was non-human, the aura was not a human aura, and also that it had multiple quirks. And All Might instantaneously thinks, multiple quirks? Could this be his doing? No, I thought he was dead long ago. No way this could be his doing. And we all know who he is. It's All For One. So All Might's like, okay, I understand now. And after that happened, basically they all go back to the USJ, and we'll leave off this video on this quote where basically Aizawa explains about the sports festival and how that's coming up, and they have 2 weeks to train. So that's the end of that portion, and I do want to take this like little last bit here to state I'm sorry. I had a bad sore throat, and I still have a pretty decently bad one. I do apologize for not uploading. I was planning on uploading it the very next day after I upload the first part, but thanks to the sore throat, I kind of couldn't get it out. Hopefully part 3 will come out tomorrow if my sore throat doesn't worsen more. Okay? If you liked it, hit the like button. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, goodbye.